A ancestral Babilônia no Iraque é uma cidade lendária, mas os profetas sempre previram sua destruição.
Public enemy number one from God's perspective is the city of Babylon.
Será que o profeta Jeremias previu a guerra do Iraque?
Armies from nations all over the world descended upon that part of the world, which is exactly what the Bible says will ultimately happen in the end times.
Isaías teria previsto a ascensão e a queda de Saddam Hussein. Será que as profecias do livro do Apocalipse preveem o fim dos tempos?
The prophecies of Revelation describe a nuclear war taking place in Babylon.
Decifrando o passado, as profecias do Iraque. Porque subiu contra ele uma nação do norte, que fará da sua terra uma solidão, e não haverá quem habite nela. 2 de agosto de 1990. O Iraque invadiu o Kuwait, iniciando uma grande crise no Golfo Persa.
Our objectives in the Persian Gulf are clear. Our goals defined and familiar. Iraq must withdraw from Kuwait. This is not, as Saddam Hussein would have it, the United States against Iraq. It is Iraq against the world.
7 de agosto de 1990. 230 mil soldados americanos chegaram à Arábia Saudita e prepararam-se para a guerra na fronteira do Kuwait. Teria o profeta Isaías previsto esses eventos mais de 2.500 anos antes? Já vem de uma terra de longe, desde a extremidade do céu, o Senhor e os instrumentos da sua indignação para destruir toda a terra. Nas primeiras horas de 17 de janeiro de 1991, teve início a Operação Tempestade no Deserto. E as palavras do profeta Jeremias pareceram mais verdadeiras do que há 2.600 anos, quando ele as proferiu. Porque eis que eu suscitarei e farei subir contra a Babilônia uma congregação de grandes nações da terra do norte, e se prepararão contra ela. Alguns acreditam que essa congregação de nações contra a Babilônia seria a coalizão contra o Iraque.
The coalition that was assembled was a worldwide coalition of nations. And of course, it was to defeat Saddam Hussein, to get him out of Kuwait and not let him take over all the oil that was there. For the first time in history, armies from nations all over the world descended upon that part of the world, which is exactly what the Bible says will ultimately happen in the end times.
Uma guerra do século XX na região da antiga Babilônia, hoje Iraque, poderia ser o cumprimento de uma antiga profecia bíblica?
When we talk about Babylon, we should realize that the area of Babylonia, the area of what was in their day called Sumer and Akkad, was really southern Iraq today. Babylon is 50 miles south of the capital today of Iraq.
Outside of the modern city of Baghdad are the ruins of what was once declared one of the ancient wonders of the world. That is the city of Babylon, its famous hanging gardens. Anyone who sees the famous Ishtar Gate that is today still in the Berlin Museum will be impressed with this incredible assault of color of the blue tiles that color the Ishtar Gate. It must have been a magnificent place, Babylon.
A história da Babilônia foi repleta de guerras, conflitos e líderes agressivos desde sua fundação em 1764 a.C. por Hammurabi até 539 a.C., quando foi destruída. O destino da cidade foi tema de várias profecias. Entre os anos de 800 e 400 a.C., os profetas do Velho Testamento fizeram menção a ela mais de 60 vezes.
The amazing thing about prophecy is that the Bible is the only book that has made so many predictions, and somewhere around 60 to 70% have already been fulfilled. So it's an astonishing book of historical facts, of predictions, and then you see how they were fulfilled. Amazing, intriguing.
Muitas dessas profecias falam sobre um de seus líderes mais poderosos, o rei Nabucodonosor II. Ainda estava a palavra na boca do rei quando caiu uma voz do céu. A ti se diz, ó rei Nabucodonosor, passou de ti o reino. Daniel 4:31.
Nebuchadnezzar inherited the throne of the Babylonian Empire from his father, who had really founded it. But Nebuchadnezzar took his inheritance and began to turn Babylonian sphere of influence into a widespread empire.
O reinado de Nabucodonosor durou de 605 a 562 a.C.
He was a master strategist, a military expert, and he took over Babylon and ran the world from that source, and then he built this humongous city. And so it stood as a hallmark of the greatest achievement of man as far as architecture in his century.
Mas as histórias da gloriosa cidade foram obscurecidas pela agressividade e a ganância do rei. Em 605 a.C., o primeiro ano de seu reinado, Nabucodonosor invadiu o reino de Judá e sua capital, Jerusalém. Parte da população foi enviada para o exílio na Babilônia.
Nebuchadnezzar's own inscriptions say that he captured all of these peoples from the entire region where Judah was, and he himself claims, I imposed upon them the brick basket. I put them to work on the temples. So it sounds to us like perhaps some of the prisoners of war may have actually faced some kind of work duties.
O jugo babilônico sobre Judá seria breve, uma sina prevista por dois profetas do Velho Testamento, Isaías e Jeremias, que tiveram visões da queda da Babilônia. O primeiro foi Isaías. Então proferirás este dito contra o rei da Babilônia e dirás, como cessou o opressor, a cidade dourada acabou. Isaías 14:4. No século VII, mais de 100 anos depois que Isaías fez as previsões, Jeremias começou a receber suas próprias mensagens de Deus. E acontecerá que se alguma nação e reino não servir o mesmo Nabucodonosor, rei de Babilônia, essa nação eu castigarei. Jeremias 27:8. Em 539 a.C., Ciro o Grande conquistou a Babilônia, o que parecia realizar as profecias de Isaías e Jeremias.
Cyrus the Great was the great ruler of the Persian Empire, and so Cyrus is the one who defeats the Babylonians in an interesting way.
It seems, according to some stories, that the Babylonians were celebrating their great New Year's celebration, and this involved some drunken festivities, and it was during the time when the Babylonian city was preoccupied with their celebrations that, according to the Greek historian Herodotus, the Persian forces dammed up the river, which dropped below the walls of Babylon, and the Persian soldiers marched under the walls, and when everybody woke from their drunken parties the next morning, Cyrus was in control. It was fait accompli. It was finished just that quickly.
Mas estudiosos e acadêmicos debatem até hoje se as profecias bíblicas referiam-se à época em que viviam ou a uma Babilônia do futuro. É o conflito entre exegese e exegese.
Exegesis means you draw the meaning out of the text.
Eisegesis is the idea, somewhat negatively used, that you're reading into the text what you already want. But the problem is, eisegesis can be an accusation. If you don't like a person's interpretation, you can often say, that's eisegesis.
Everybody does a little bit of eisegesis. It's very difficult not to do it because we read it with contemporary eyes.
A seguir, o profeta que previu a queda de seu próprio povo e a destruição da Babilônia 150 anos antes que o fato acontecesse.
He says to his own people, you are going to experience the sting of this empire named Babylon.
Milhares de anos atrás, profetas judeus passaram mensagens a seu povo sobre seu maior inimigo, a Babilônia. O primeiro a prognosticar o futuro do império foi o profeta Isaías, no fim do século 8 a.C. Peso de Babilônia, que viu Isaías, filho de Amós. Isaías 13:1.
Isaiah was a prophet probably born into a royal family of Judah and knew his way around, was highly educated.
Isaiah is talking to the people of Judah, and he's talking to them during a period of great international danger for the kingdom of Judah.
Judá era o reino ao sul, cuja capital era Jerusalém e que se sentia ameaçado pelo Império Assírio do norte da Mesopotâmia. Após ver a invasão e destruição do reino de Israel em cerca de 721 a.C., o povo de Judá se convenceu de que os assírios também invadiriam Jerusalém.
Assyria crushed everyone, and Judah and Jerusalem knew quite well what they had done to Samaria and to the northern nation of Israel only 100 years earlier.
Isaías estava convencido de que Judá sofreria a mesma sina terrível de Israel. Eis que virão dias em que tudo quanto houver em tua casa, com o que entesouraram teus pais até ao dia de hoje, será levado para a Babilônia. Não ficará coisa alguma, disse o Senhor. Isaías 39:6.
Isaiah was from the line of David, had access to the royal court in Jerusalem. Obviously, he's pro-Israel, pro-Judah against these surrounding nations, and yet he predicts that the nation of Judah is going into captivity to Babylon.
150 anos depois de Isaías profetizar o exílio, ele finalmente aconteceu em 596 a.C. Portanto, o meu povo será levado cativo por falta de entendimento, e seus nobres terão fome, e sua multidão se secará de sede. Isaías 5:13.
He says to his own people, you are going to experience the sting of this empire named Babylon. But then turns around and in his messages to the nation says, oh, and by the way, Babylon, you also will experience that same sting from the hand of God.
Isaiah spoke a great deal about the destruction of Babylon because it was such a growing power in the day in which he lived. And he was predicting that it would be a tool that God would use to reduce the children of Israel to humility.
E segundo Isaías, a Babilônia sofreria tanto quanto Jerusalém. Eis que eu despertarei contra eles os medos. E a Babilônia, o ornamento dos reinos, a glória e a soberba dos caldeus, será como Sodoma e Gomorra quando Deus as transtornou. Isaías 13, 17 e 19.
As Isaiah talks about this city named Babylon, he says some things. He says, Babylon will be destroyed in the day of the Lord. And then he describes it. It's a time when the sun, the moon, and the stars will be darkened, when the earth will be shaken off its foundations, when God will be entering history to settle accounts, to judge those who've opposed him.
The point is that God is the one that will take control of events, not the Assyrians, not the Babylonians, but God.
Em 539 a.C., cerca de 150 anos depois de Isaías ter feito suas profecias, os medos tomaram a Babilônia com o apoio dos persas. Eles conquistaram a região, mas não destruíram a cidade. Estudiosos se perguntam se essa conquista seria realmente o evento previsto pelo profeta.
Isaiah 13:19, dealing with the destruction of Babylon, is a fascinating passage because Babylon historically was not destroyed by its enemies, and certainly not, as this passage describes, by God in a situation parallel to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
The question in Isaiah 13 is, since Isaiah is writing in about 700 BC, is that looking at the destruction of Babylon in December of 689 BC when Sennacherib the Assyrian did destroy the city? Is it looking at 539 when Cyrus came in, the Medo-Persian, and just took the city but didn't destroy it? Or is it looking at an ultimate future eschatological destruction of Babylon?
O profeta Jeremias surgiu mais de 100 anos depois de Isaías fazer suas previsões. Acredita-se que ele viveu entre 650 e o início do século VI a.C.
Jeremiah was called to be a prophet before he was even born. And that is the key to understanding Jeremiah's life, which is the equivalent of having the prophetic job programmed into his DNA. It was something he couldn't do anything about.
Jeremiah preached about Babylon because Babylon was the great threat. At the time of Jeremiah, there was one dominant power in the entire ancient Near Eastern scene, and that dominant power clearly was Babylon.
Segundo Jeremias, o povo e o clero de Jerusalém haviam se afastado demais de Deus e por isso seriam castigados. Eis que eu enviarei e tomarei a todas as gerações do norte, diz o Senhor, como também a Nabucodonosor, rei de Babilônia, meu servo, e os trarei sobre esta terra e sobre seus moradores, e os destruirei totalmente. Jeremias 25:9.
The people didn't seem to respond to the preaching of Isaiah. And he was very discouraged. As a holy, godly man, he saw all the corruption and sin. And Jeremiah lamented that terrible condition in the nation Israel. And so he forecast doom, gloom, and despair on his immediate generation.
And he gets his reputation as the weeping prophet, the one who's always complaining, not only because of his personal life, because he's mistreated, but because he cries for Jerusalem. And he says to the people of Jerusalem, you've got to change your ways.
Conforme se aproximava a tomada de Jerusalém pelos babilônios, a mensagem de Jeremias ao rei de Judá era sinistra.
King Hezekiah was the king that Jeremiah ministered to and spoke to. Jeremiah tells Hezekiah and the people, the sinfulness of the people is going to prevent any kind of salvation. Face it, we're going to be destroyed. Now, obviously, this was not popular politics. And so Jeremiah was cast into a cistern. People tried to kill him.
Mas a profecia de Jeremias sobre a queda de Jerusalém se tornou realidade.
The Babylonians eventually, in 586, surround Jerusalem. They besiege the city. Food gets scarce in the city. It becomes a very, very difficult situation. Babylonians eventually are able to break into the city. They destroy the wall. The temple is destroyed.
In fact, Jeremiah was witness firsthand to the destruction of Jerusalem by the army of Babylon.
Boa parte da população judia foi levada para o exílio na Babilônia, como Jeremias previu. E depois disto, diz o Senhor, entregarei Zedequias, rei de Judá, e seus servos e o povo, na mão de Nabucodonosor, rei de Babilônia. Jeremias 21:7.
Jeremiah was a kind of a favorite of the Babylonians because they knew the word that he had been proclaiming.
The Babylonians offered to give him safe transport out of Judah, and he refused to leave. So he was very committed to the people of God and to staying with them and suffering the same fate that they did.
Durante esse período de desesperança, Jeremias assegurou ao povo que a destruição de Jerusalém não passaria despercebida a Deus. O profeta previu uma destruição mais apocalíptica ainda da Babilônia.
And at this point, in the book of Jeremiah, a very odd thing happens. Jeremiah's words, which have been all about the success of Babylon, now turn to a proclamation of a threat of doom. Babylon will be destroyed because God does not put up with unjust empires.
E toda esta terra virá a ser um deserto e um espanto. Acontecerá, porém, que quando se cumprirem os 70 anos, visitarei o rei de Babilônia e esta nação, diz o Senhor, e farei deles uns desertos perpétuos. Jeremias 25:11-12.
What's amazing about Jeremiah's prophecies on Babylon, he pictures an absolute destruction. As the enemy comes to the city of Babylon, women and children are going to be killed. Old and young are going to be killed. The walls are torn down. The gates are burned with fire. The city is pillaged.
Cyrus was just able to march in, take over Babylon without any bloodshed. So the odd thing is that Jeremiah proclaims a very violent end for Babylon, but in actual fact, there wasn't much violence at all.
As profecias de Jeremias estariam erradas ou ainda não teriam se realizado? A seguir, um profeta previu a queda da Babilônia enquanto interpretava um sonho do rei Nabucodonosor.
Nebuchadnezzar, the great emperor, the great conqueror, has just been told by this Jewish prisoner of war that his regime will last for a while, but will come to an end.
Em 626 a.C., Jeremias recebeu o chamado para ser profeta. Por mais de 40 anos, alertou que os babilônios destruiriam Jerusalém. O povo só reagia com escárnio e zombaria, mas a história provou que ele estava certo. No ano terceiro do reinado de Joaquim, rei de Judá, veio Nabucodonosor, rei de Babilônia, a Jerusalém e a sitiou. Daniel 1:1. O reino babilônio derrotou Judá, destruindo o templo de Jerusalém em 586 a.C. Após a conquista, os babilônios permitiram que Jeremias ficasse na cidade e evitasse uma vida de escravidão. Mas o profeta Daniel não teve tanta sorte.
Daniel was a Jewish prisoner of war, taken in the exile when Jerusalem was conquered in 587. And the story is that Daniel is a member of the royal family who is taken into the Babylonian training program for young prisoners of war to become acceptable helpers.
Mas muitos acreditam que Daniel foi bem mais do que um simples prisioneiro.
Daniel was the interpreter of dreams, and he was considered a deeply wise man because of his ability to interpret dreams.
Uma dessas interpretações foi feita para o próprio Nabucodonosor e está registrada no 2º capítulo do livro de Daniel.
A wonderful story is told about the Emperor Nebuchadnezzar. Apparently, the emperor is having troubles sleeping. He's having bad dreams. And so when he awakes the next morning, he calls in his advisors and he asks them, I need this dream interpreted. It's troubling me. So he goes to his advisors. Advisors, tell me, what was the meaning of this dream? And his advisors all bow. O king, live forever. Tell us your dream, and we will interpret the dream for you.
Mas, segundo a história, o rei não lhes deu os detalhes do sonho. Para comprovar que eram mesmo profetas, o rei pediu aos intérpretes que lhe contassem o sonho e depois lhe dessem uma explicação.
Well, as we read the story, we can practically hear the sweat breaking out on their foreheads as they hear this request, because they repeat to the emperor, oh, please, emperor, no one's ever asked us such a thing. Please, tell us your dream, and then we will be happy to tell you what it means. And Nebuchadnezzar gets angry. You're stalling for time. Off with their heads. And so the whole lot of them get dragged away. And apparently Daniel and his friends get dragged along with them. And while Daniel's being dragged away, he says, what's this all about? And he gets a quick explanation. And Daniel then says, give me a chance. So Daniel goes into the chamber of the king, and he tells the king what his dream was.
Tu, ó rei, estavas vendo, e eis aqui uma grande estátua. A cabeça daquela estátua era de ouro fino, seu peito e os braços de prata, o seu ventre e suas coxas de cobre, as pernas de ferro, os seus pés em parte de ferro e em parte de barro. Estavas vendo isto quando uma pedra foi cortada sem mão, a qual feriu a estátua nos pés de ferro e de barro e os esmiuçou. Daniel 2:31-34.
Although it doesn't say this in the story, Nebuchadnezzar must have been impressed because he didn't say, no, that wasn't it.
Aturdido, o rei se manteve em silêncio aguardando a interpretação do sonho.
Daniel carries right on and says, this, O king, was the meaning of your dream. You were that head of gold, and after you will come another who is lesser, of silver, and after that will come someone who is lesser yet, of bronze. And then there will come a time of instability as iron and clay is unstable together. And then the kingdom of God will come and smash the statue, end the regime, and the winds of history will blow it away.
Daniel outlined that there would be 4 world kingdoms until the end times, and that's exactly what you've had. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And the interesting thing is the Roman Empire split into 2 divisions, and that's symbolized by the 2 legs of that image.
Now, the amazing thing is that Nebuchadnezzar, the great emperor, the great conqueror, has just been told by this Jewish prisoner of war that his regime will last for a while, but will come to an end. And yet, Daniel is rewarded. He's rewarded royally and brought up to be one of the main advisors of the emperor. It's a fascinating story.
65 anos após a profecia de Daniel para o rei Nabucodonosor, a Babilônia foi destruída. Mas quando seu coração se exalçou e o seu espírito se endureceu em soberba, foi derrubado do seu trono real e passou dele a sua glória. Daniel 5:20. As profecias sobre a Babilônia também aparecem no livro do Apocalipse, uma das passagens mais temidas da Bíblia.
In the judgments in the book of Revelation, there's going to be cataclysmic judgment on the earth.
Durante milhares de anos, os estudiosos, acadêmicos e clérigos meditaram sobre o significado das profecias da Babilônia. Antes uma cidade gloriosa, o reinado da Babilônia logo acabaria. Os profetas hebreus Isaías, Daniel e Jeremias previram sua ruína. Mas e se essas previsões de destruição falassem de milhares de anos no futuro? Uma das passagens mais temidas da Bíblia sobre o fim da Babilônia encontra-se no Apocalipse. Portanto, um dia virão as suas pragas, a morte, o pranto e a fome, e será queimada no fogo, porque é forte o Senhor que a julga. Apocalipse 18:8.
In the book of Revelation, you see that kind of spark of the apocalyptic messianism that was also part of Second Temple Judaism. And it's this kind of thing that fuels what we see in some of the evangelical groups, where what they're doing is they're looking at the words of the prophets for hints that things are about to happen.
Os estudiosos debatem se o Apocalipse fala da cidade de Babilônia ou se a usa apenas como metáfora. Uma passagem enigmática do Apocalipse se refere à prostituta Babilônia. E na sua testa estava escrito um nome, Mistério. A Grande Babilônia, a mãe das prostituições e abominações da terra. Apocalipse 17:5.
Because of Nebuchadnezzar's armies and their destruction of the city, Babylon became the symbol of all things evil. And so later empires would be called Babylon by the Jews.
Babylon stands for rebellion against God, idolatry and false worship, and it also stands for man's desire to control his fellow man.
Muitos estudiosos acreditam que a palavra Babilônia no Apocalipse seja uma referência à antiga Roma, não ao reino de Nabucodonosor. Há uma passagem que parece falar especificamente de Roma. Aqui há sentido que tem sabedoria. As 7 cabeças são 7 montes, sobre os quais a mulher está assentada. Apocalipse 17:9.
The extrapolation that is made in the book of Revelation in the New Testament, particularly chapter 18, in which the text talks about the whore Babylon, but what's clear in context is they're talking about the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, when it sets out to persecute the early church, is understood as the embodiment of evil that is a threat to the purposes of God.
Embora Roma fosse conhecida como a cidade das 7 colinas, os especialistas discordam da interpretação da passagem.
The book of Revelation introduces us to the city of Babylon in connection with the city of Rome.
But in the context there it says the 7 heads are 7 mountains, and those 7 mountains are symbolic of 7 kings. So the 7 mountains aren't the 7 mountains or 7 hills of the city of Rome, they're 7 kings.
Outros estudiosos contrapõem que quando a Bíblia diz Babilônia, refere-se à antiga Babilônia.
To say that the biblical prophets in the time of Babylon were referring to another regime centuries later, I think not. I think we need to stick with the discipline of doing serious history, and reading the prophets primarily within their own time as best we can.
Mas seja essa Babilônia do passado ou do futuro, os conflitos dos séculos 20 e 21 na região suscitaram um grande interesse nas profecias antigas.
A fascination with biblical prophecy, I think, is perfectly innocent. I'm interested in biblical prophecy. I'm interested in what it's about and what the prophets were actually talking about. But here's the problem. Prophecy can become an obsession.
I think people like it because it forecasts the future. In fact, the only way the book of Revelation makes sense is to take it basically literally, unless the immediate context indicates some other meaning, and recognize that it is forecasting things to come primarily.
E um forte anjo levantou uma pedra como uma grande mol e lançou-a ao mar, dizendo: com igual ímpeto será lançada a Babilônia, aquela grande cidade, e não será jamais achada. Apocalipse 18, 21. Se essa parte da profecia se refere ao futuro, então a Babilônia teria de ser reconstruída para sofrer a sina de que os profetas falavam. Ciente ou não desse fato, Saddam Hussein queria ser o homem responsável por sua reconstrução mais de 2.600 anos após sua ruína.
Saddam Hussein came to power in 1979. 1 year later, he started the war with Iran and started rebuilding Babylon. In 1987, he had completed part of Nebuchadnezzar's palace. A number of the other temples in the area had restored the theater that Alexander the Great and his successors had built. 1 year later, he had built 3 giant hills, literally bracketing the city of Babylon. In essence, Nebuchadnezzar had a palace in Babylon. I have Babylon inside my palace complex. And it really did give insight into the mind of Saddam Hussein.
Parecia claro que Saddam queria se equiparar ao rei Nabucodonosor.
Nebuchadnezzar rebuilt most of the original city and stamped his name on the bricks with a little formula declaring he's the one building Babylon. Saddam Hussein came in and literally dug down to find the foundations of Nebuchadnezzar's old buildings and cleaned them off, and then started building right on top of those original foundations and used almost the same formula, not the original cuneiform language, but now written in Arabic, but with the same statement, only now it's I, Saddam Hussein, am rebuilding this city.
Se a cidade da Babilônia for reconstruída, estará de acordo com uma das visões mais apocalípticas do livro do Apocalipse e do fim dos tempos.
The general scenario of the end time is that God, who began the world, will end the world. Just as there was a first day of creation, so there will be a last day. Quite literally, the earth will be torn apart, everyone will be brought forward, everyone will be judged, and the righteous get their reward and the wicked get their punishment.
Muitos acreditam que esse fim dos tempos tem ligação com as profecias sobre a Babilônia, com o Iraque dos tempos modernos e até com uma guerra nuclear.
In the judgments in the book of Revelation, there's going to be cataclysmic judgment on the earth. Many people take these judgments when they say devastation is going to take place. There's going to be nuclear warheads and nuclear attacks and these different types of things.
There are concerns about the use of nuclear weapons in the Middle East. For many people, the idea is that, maybe it's those kinds of weapons that will unleash this final conflict.
It talks about 2 angels or demons bound in the Euphrates River in this book of Revelation. We know that that's in fact in Iraq and Babylon. Now, and then it says when they're released upon the earth, they would kill 300 million people. Now you say, well, what is that about? How can 2 demon spirits kill 300 million people? It has to be nuclear with those numbers.
Apesar da teoria de um holocausto nuclear em um futuro próximo, a maioria dos peritos militares e religiosos tem suas reservas.
I don't see the United States using a nuclear weapon at all in that region of the world. Iraq has 0 capabilities to produce nuclear weapons at this time, so I can't see that in the future.
I believe that these are supernatural judgments. They're not man-made judgments. They're judgments that come from God.
A seguir, a captura de Saddam Hussein foi prevista pelos profetas?
Precisely what happened to Nebuchadnezzar happened to Saddam Hussein. He hid in a hole. He was completely disorientated. It was no different.
Desde os tempos bíblicos, discute-se se as profecias antigas referiam-se apenas ao tempo em que foram escritas, ou se elas poderiam informar o presente também. Quando se fala das profecias da Babilônia, alguns buscam indicações nos escritos dos profetas Isaías, Jeremias e Daniel para ver se tem relevância nos dias atuais.
People look to the Hebrew prophets for meaning. They look to the prophets at a time when God spoke directly to the people about being righteous, about being a sovereign nation.
Mas é possível haver uma conexão entre eventos atuais e profecias antigas?
God gives the prophets certain knowledge and they speak that to the people. And that is really for all time. So they're not necessarily prophecies about what will happen in the future, but it's more a warning of look at what God did to those people in the past.
Será que a Babilônia condenada pelos profetas é o Iraque de hoje e não a Babilônia dos tempos antigos? Como a Guerra do Golfo no Iraque em 1991, existem paralelos similares entre as profecias da Babilônia e a Segunda Guerra do Golfo.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict, commenced at a time of our choosing.
20 de março de 2003, sul do Iraque. A segunda coalizão de forças militares liderada pelos Estados Unidos entrou no país com a Operação Liberdade ao Iraque. O presidente George W. Bush inspirou-se nos profetas.
In the words of the prophet Isaiah, to the captives come out, and to those in darkness, be free.
Porque me levantarei contra eles, diz o Senhor dos Exércitos, e desarraigarei da Babilônia o nome, os resíduos, o filho e o neto, diz o Senhor. Isaías 14:22. Alguns peritos alegam que a referência está ligada à queda de Saddam e seus dois filhos, Uday e Qusay.
The interesting thing is that the same spirit that was in Saddam Hussein was in the boys. They were just as nutty as he was. And they were just as predictable as he was. But they were in fact cut off astonishingly, like the prophet Isaiah said.
Os filhos foram mortos após um tiroteio de 6 horas com os militares americanos em 22 de julho de 2003, numa residência na zona norte de Mossul, no Iraque. Outra profecia do livro de Isaías, capítulo 21, versículo 9, parece ter previsto a queda de Saddam. E todas as imagens de escultura dos seus deuses se quebrarão contra a terra. Isaías 21:9. Em 9 de abril de 2003, na Praça Fardos, uma grande estátua de Saddam Hussein foi jogada ao chão com a ajuda de soldados americanos. Mas nem todos concordam que esse é o cumprimento da profecia de Isaías.
Comparing the falling of the statue to Saddam Hussein is a real stretch, in my opinion. That's trying to use newspaper prophecy, and that's always dangerous.
Além do destino de Saddam e sua família, alguns estudiosos acreditam que Isaías pode ter profetizado sobre o arsenal que seria usado durante as guerras no Iraque. E eis agora, vem um bando de homens e cavaleiros aos pares. Então respondeu e disse, caída é Babilônia, caída é. Isaías 21:9.
When we saw the Abrams tank and this astonishing military movement, it made me move quickly to read the scripture in Isaiah about this chariot of men and horsemen, because Isaiah couldn't possibly have known about Abrams tanks. He was trying to describe something in his words, but in fact what that Abrams tank did was almost a perfect picture of a prophecy by Isaiah.
O tanque Abrams M1A1 foi o cavalo de batalha da Segunda Guerra contra o Iraque.
M1 Abrams is the most sophisticated tank in production right now. It also has a 120 millimeter main gun, enormous firepower. It can destroy any other tank in the world.
Será possível que essa seja a carruagem que Isaías previu em sua visão?
Imagery about chariots are significant. Chariots were one of the most feared weapons of the ancient world. They were the mobile firing platform that the Egyptians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians all used. However, once again, I think it's very difficult to try to decide that a reference to a chariot, a feared weapon of the time of the Bible, is some kind of proleptic reference to weapons of the future. That's a dangerous leap to make because it ends up justifying our use of some of the most horrific inventions that we've come up with.
Além das armas, alguns acreditam que a prisão de Saddam foi pressagiada por Daniel. Na mesma hora se cumpriu a palavra sobre Nabucodonosor, e foi tirado dentre os homens e comia erva como os bois. E seu corpo foi molhado pelo orvalho do céu até que lhe cresceu pelo como as penas da águia e as suas unhas como as das aves. Daniel 4:33.
Daniel was prophesying to Nebuchadnezzar. One of his prophecies was that Nebuchadnezzar was going to go insane and end up in a field, hiding. Interesting prediction from the prophet Daniel that this man would lose his kingdom and that he would flee for his life. He would become completely disorientated. And precisely what happened to Nebuchadnezzar happened to Saddam Hussein. He hid in a hole. He was completely disorientated. It was no different.
Em 13 de dezembro de 2003, Saddam Hussein foi capturado depois que uma denúncia levou as tropas americanas a um pequeno esconderijo subterrâneo perto da cidade natal do ex-ditador. Mas enquanto os especialistas continuam seus debates, ainda não se sabe as verdadeiras intenções das profecias.
When events take place in modern times, people try to look for meaning or some kind of divine activity that brought this event about. People want to look to authority. Whether they look directly to God, that might be a possibility.
Many contemporary approaches to the book of Revelation and to the second half of the book of Daniel, both of which are apocalyptic literature, eisegete the passages that they read. And by that, what I mean is that they read an agenda into the literature.
If we understand, let's say, the prophecies of Jeremiah being primarily, and I would even say almost exclusively, for the people of that time, then how is that prophecy revelation to us today? What does that mean for us today?
They need to recognize that the book of Revelation is not to be decoded against the backdrop of our newspapers and our televisions and radios.
Mas será possível que o destino da futura Babilônia foi escrito há milhares de anos? E foram soltos os 4 anjos que estavam preparados para a hora, o dia e o mês e o ano a fim de matarem a terça parte dos homens. Apocalipse 9:15.
The prophecies of Revelation describe a nuclear war taking place in Babylon. It talks about a period of time in history when great masses of humanity would be killed, and it talks about a period of time that I believe 1/3 of the earth would be destroyed. That has to be nuclear. We may be seeing something very, very serious, a lot more dangerous, and possibly a lot closer than any of us have any comprehension of.
Today, the definition of prophecy becomes difficult for us because it isn't just that prophets have a message for our time. Prophets had a message for their time primarily, and that message to their time can often be relevant to our time as well. But that's a little different than saying that the prophets were actually imagining 2005 or 2006 when they were making their statements.